What is going on, y'all? I'm finally back from BlurredCon. I'm gonna let y'all know BlurredCon was fantastic. I've been there for the whole 3 days. I had fun. I went there with Tiffany. We had an absolute ball. But we're gonna talk more about that on the live stream. I think it's more appropriate to talk with y'all there. While we were there was a lot going on outside of BlurredCon, and I didn't even know where to start. But I had to talk to y'all about this particular situation that has been developing for quite some time, and it has to do with Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa, who recently were found dead not too long ago. We're going to talk more about it because this has been developing for quite some time, and their death was pretty haunting if you were to ask me. So for those that don't know Gene Hackman, he's been in the Hollywood scene for quite some time. I think that's an understatement when I say that. Gene Hackman has been in Hollywood for a very long time. He's well known for playing many roles in film and television included. He's also known in the nerd community for playing Lex Luthor in multiple Superman movies. Gene Hackman has grown to be very old. He's in his 90s. He's lived a very long life. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's a while ago, and it has progressed to advanced stages. We're going to talk more about his death alongside his wife, because it's pretty sad when you think about how they went out rather than what killed them. Gene Hackman likely died about a week after his wife Betsy died due to the hantavirus. Hackman died of cardiovascular disease with Alzheimer's disease as a significant contributing factor. There was a lot of conspiracies and conversations around the death of both Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. So there's a lot to digest from this story. So we're gonna first talk about Betsy Arakawa, since she was the one that first passed away, and then we're going to later talk about Gene Hackman and how he died. At the news conference on Friday, Santa Fe Sheriff Adam Mendoza said that surveillance cameras showed that Arakawa did errands on February 11th, visiting the Sprouts Market and a CVS pharmacy. She also corresponded with a massage therapist by email that day. Her car entered the gated subdivision where the couple lived around 5:15 p.m. No activity or communications were found after that date. Let's set the stage here. They've been living in a secluded mansion since COVID. Betsy took it upon herself to be the sole caretaker of Gene Hackman, wanting him to be as comfortable as possible in his final years, especially being diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Betsy would ensure that she would overlook like his medication, for instance, his diet, his daily routines. But at the same time, being somebody that takes care of someone with Alzheimer's can be a lot for one person. And Betsy is a real one for taking care of him. I mean, of course, she is the wife of Gene Hackman, but you would probably think to yourself, why didn't they have another caretaker to bear those responsibilities? I'm not in a position to answer that. All I know is Betsy has been taking care of Gene Hackman for quite a while now. So fast forwarding to February 11th of this year, Betsy was just running her errands. She visited like a farmer's market. She went to a CVS pharmacy. She also went to like a pet shop, and then she returned back into her home that same day. And then things from there on out was just quiet from Betsy. She appeared to have fallen ill. She may have been sick for quite some time, but she probably didn't know what exactly was making her sick. She probably believed it was like a cold, maybe a flu of some sort that she just had to get over, and that's it. She didn't think anything of it. It wasn't until one morning when she went to a bathroom, I believe. She went to the bathroom. She took one of their 3 dogs and put that dog into a kennel or a crate. I believe the dog had to go to like a medical procedure that day. She was taking her medication. She'd fallen so ill from this thing that she was going through, she later collapsed. Not only did she just drop dead, but her dog is in a kennel, just zipped up. So the dog has no access to escape the kennel. But we need to understand, what exactly did Betsy die from? And she died from a disease known as the hantavirus. According to the CDC, hantaviruses can infect and cause serious diseases in people worldwide. People get hantavirus from contact with rodents, like rats and mice, especially when exposed to urine, droppings, and saliva. It can also spread through a bite or scratch by a rodent, but this is rare. Symptoms for the HPS, or at least early earlier symptoms can include fatigue, fever, muscle aches. Half of patients can also experience headaches, dizziness, chills, and abdominal problems like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. 4 to 10 days after the initial phase of the illness, late symptoms can appear. These symptoms can include coughing, shortness of breath. Patients might experience tightness in the chest as lungs fill with fluid. HPS can be very deadly. 38% of people who develop respiratory symptoms like coughing, shortness of breath may die from the disease. So I did a little bit of a deep dive into the hantavirus, and what's crazy about the hantavirus is that it can be oftentimes confused with influenza, especially within the first 72 hours of when these symptoms come up. I live in New York City. There are so many rats in New York City. You already see it through memes. We live in apartment buildings, and there's always rats or mice in these buildings, as well as roaches. I never heard of the hantavirus before. I never heard of any New Yorker that died from the hantavirus. So it's pretty crazy to me that you have a couple, a very rich couple at that live in a mansion that is exposed to this kind of virus that can be transmitted from an infected rodent like a mice or a rat to a human. So there may be conspiracies that you may be conjuring up in your head a little bit as to how she may have caught this virus if it came from a rat. There is one article that may have suggested that Gene Hackman's wife could have caught the rare virus from cleaning their garage. This is just a possibility. We don't know exactly how she caught it. Again, there has to be a mouse or a rat that has to be infected in order to transmit that to a human. And then a human has to get in contact with the feces, the saliva, the urine, and we don't know how Betsy came across that. So now we move on to Gene Hackman, and it's pretty sad how this whole thing came to be, because again, you're talking about a man who's going through a lot of complications with his heart. He has a serious heart condition that's going on. He has a pacemaker, and not to mention he's going through advanced stages of Alzheimer's. I don't really have to break down to you how that went. You have a dead wife in the bathroom, and then you have a man in a house suffering from advanced Alzheimer's. I can let you do the math from here. Hackman likely died around February 18th when the last activity was detected on his pacemaker, Gerald said during the Friday's news conference. An autopsy determined that Hackman died of heart disease and also suffered from advanced Alzheimer's. He tested negative for the hantavirus. He was in a very poor health state. He had significant heart disease, and I think ultimately that's what resulted in his death. Asked if Hackman was aware of his wife's passing, Gerald said, "That question's difficult to answer, but I can tell you that he was in an advanced state of Alzheimer's, and it's quite possible that he was not aware that she was deceased. There was no food in Hackman's stomach, meaning that he had not eaten recently before he died. She didn't find evidence of dehydration." It's pretty scary when you think about it, because you have a dog in a kennel, you have a wife that is deceased already from the hantavirus, and you have this man that's wandering the house, left to fend for himself, and again, because of the advanced Alzheimer's, he's not aware that his wife is dead. That is a very haunting thing to think about. Now, even though he didn't acknowledge her death, it seemed as if he was taking care of himself a little bit. There was no signs of dehydration, so he must have been drinking something within that week. They were found by a pair of maintenance workers in their housing community shortly before 2 p.m. on February 26. The workers then notified the community caretaker, who went to the home and then called 911. The caretaker didn't have all the information when he called, but he said he was looking through a window at two bodies lying on the floor inside. The caller can be heard on the 911 audio telling the dispatcher that he could see what appeared to be two motionless bodies inside the house. Shaken, he repeatedly says, "Damn," and urges authorities to rapidly respond. "No, they're not moving. Please send someone here quickly," the caller says. Locations of the wife, Betsy, was found in her bathroom, and there was pills scattered. And as for her husband, Gene Hackman, he was found in the mudroom, and the bodies were found to be mummified. So two things that we have to cover here. So people are thinking, first of all, what is a mudroom? So a mudroom is a little room that usually connects you from, say, a garage or from the backyard, for instance, into the kitchen. So it's the backyard or the garage, then there's a little room known as the mud room, and then there's the house, or in this case, the kitchen. So the mud room usually has like the laundry mat, for instance, there may be a hamper there, some coat racks. It's usually a place where you could take off, wet or dirty clothes before you enter the actual house. And then we have a lot of people throwing around the word mummified. There was mummification that took place with Betsy and Jean. So you're probably thinking to yourself, mummified as in like their bodies were like wrapped up or something like that. You're probably thinking, what does mummification look like? Mummification results when the tissue of the human body begins to dry out, known as desiccation, and occurs when a corpse is in an environment that is hot and dry. Mummification is the point at which decomposition process ceases. The development of mummification is considered to take weeks, if not months, and once mummification is reached, the body can be preserved in that state for an extended period of time. When mummified, the skin of the body becomes dark and dry and appears leathery, causing a parched appearance that preserves the corpse for a more extended period. It can occur to the body as a whole, or it can be localized to certain extremities, including the tongue. As you just saw there, because they were inside of a house and it was hot and dry, of course, they live in New Mexico, their bodies are decomposing, but the decomposition of their bodies were to cease because of the climate. Of course, mummification would take place. And the whole situation is so sad because, again, Betsy was the caretaker, the sole caretaker of Jean. She took all that responsibility on herself, of course, till death do us part, right? But it really sucked that she was the one that went out first. She caught the hantavirus and she thought it was nothing too serious, which is understandable because a lot of times the hantavirus can be confused with the flu. So now she's dead, and now you have Jean, who is in a house with advanced Alzheimer's by himself. And when the maintenance worker arrived, all they see is 3 dead bodies. They see 2 other dogs. They had 3 dogs, mind you. 1 was dead, of course, but 2 were alive and healthy, as a matter of fact. It's just a terrible situation all around. I kind of wish that Betsy had like another caretaker, put a lot of responsibilities on herself, and I respect that because she is the wife. But at the same time, there's only so much that you can bear, and you got to cover your bases too at the end of the day. We're only human. We're not Superman. Until then, y'all, that's really all I have for y'all. More stories to come later on, but until then, I will see you guys in my next video. Peace.